Wonderful. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Black in Cancer Pipeline Programme Mentorship panel. Today, we're going to be talking all about mentorship, formal and informal. So thank you so much for coming along. Throughout the talk, please feel free to post in the chat if you've got any questions or queries, and we'll have a time for Q&A at the end. So yeah, thank you everybody for coming, and we'll get started. So Mamadou, wonderful, already ahead of me. So we are the Black in Cancer Mentorship and Outreach team. So if you could go on to the next slide, please. So speaking, I am Julia, and I'll let the other two introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Rhea. I'm one of the co-directors of Mentorship and Outreach for Black in Cancer.
And I am Mamadou. I'm also one of the co-directors here based in the US.
Oh yeah, that's an important thing to say. So we're based on both sides of the pond. So Rhea and I are in the UK. I'm in Manchester and Rhea's in London. And then Mamadou is in the States and he's in New York. So we're representing both sides. So we're an international team, which is really exciting. So Mamadou, I'm going to hand over to you to get us started.
Yes, so I will be talking about sort of my experience as a mentee, both in an informal and a formal setting. But before we get there, I want to sort of give a context for my experience as a mentee. I grew up in Guinea, West Africa. Me and my family, we grew up with very humble beginnings. I grew up in the capital. And one thing I finally remember that my family always mentions is how much I loved school. I really enjoyed going to school, and I was also one of those super curious troublemakers who would always climb a tree or mess around with some beehives or pick up baby chicks and get attacked by the mother hen. And so I was a very curious child growing up, and so my family understood that. And so that led us to immigrating to the US, where we touched down here in New York. But eventually we moved to New Jersey, where I grew up in a small town, a classic, hardworking, blue-collar town, where I went through the public schools there. I went through Perth Amboy High School, and so the one thing important to mention is I am the oldest of 5 kids. My parents never graduated high school. And so the concept of going to school and going to college was, completely, foreign to me. And so I didn't have an older brother or sister to look up to. And so I needed sort of guidance or mentorship from others to sort of navigate through this field, because my parents couldn't really offer that to me. And I was a first generation, and so I didn't have even family members who even graduated or remote family members. So that sort of sets up the context of my experience as a mentee. And so I graduated top of my class, but due to my immigration status, I could not get access to funding at some of the universities that I got into. And so I ended up going to Essex County College in Newark, New Jersey, when they offered me a full scholarship as part of the honors program there. And as part of the honors program, we got, it was a small cohort, and we had a lot of mentorship from the various faculty that was part of it. And one of my first mentorship that I fondly remember was my microbiology professor, Dr. Mittman. And so, he really was one of the first people to really understand and note that, I was the first generation coming from low socioeconomics, and it really took me under his wing and really mentored me and gave me the opportunities and resources that he had in his network to really help me get to the next level. And at the same time, Dr. Lee, who is a vice president of academic affairs now at the university, also is very instrumental in being a mentor for me. And so both of them collectively helped me actually do my capstone research project. I'm standing here next to another great mentor of mine, Dr. Barry, who was the honors program director at the time and has since retired. And next to that is one of my really close friends. And so one thing that this college really gave us was, beyond the mentorship, they gave us the opportunity to actually do research, even though research was not part of the county college. And funnily enough, we were actually able to present this literature-based research because we didn't have resources to actually do wet lab. And we actually presented our research at a research symposium at Rutgers University. And just a quick thing, the actual meeting or symposium was called Meeting in Miniature. And for some reason, we ended up going there with small posters, and we noticed everybody else had actually normal size posters. So that was sort of a funny thing. But, this was my first sort of formal turned into informal mentorship experience. With Dr. Mittman, I still, am very connected and very closely. He invites me every year to his family Thanksgiving. I've met his twin boys and I've met his wife. So it's been something I've sort of maintained over time. And so during my time there, I got an opportunity from one of my mentors of this summer internship program, at the time called the Summer Medical Dental Education Program. Now it's rebranded to another name. But essentially, I got to do this summer program that exposed me to both the clinical and dental, and a little bit of research and presentation, and really sort of got my feet wet because initially I was interested in becoming a physician. And so this was my, sort of diverse cohort you see on the left. And on the right is the program coordinator, Miss Anthony. She was very instrumental in ensuring that I had a great experience as one of the only community college students that was part of this program. And over time, I got close to her, and she became another mentor of mine, which was very valuable to me because of her. She actually sent me my next internship experience, which opened the door to 2 subsequent internships. She sent me a internship for the University of Michigan, which had just started one of their summer programs there, and I had applied and got in. And I did that for 2 summers. So you see me here on the left. I'm doing this is a CAM assay. So essentially I was injecting cancer cells into essentially this egg and sort of looking at angiogenesis, or sort of the formation of blood vessels and dissemination of the cancer cells. And on the right is actually me presenting at the annual biomedical research for minority students. And so all of these really came about from sort of my network within my, sort of through my mentors and their network, and actually sending me opportunities. And I took advantage of those opportunities every chance I got. And so one thing I finally, recall was that these opportunities expanded with every new mentor I got. Every new mentor sort of gave me a new angle or a new opportunity, whether it was initially getting a job offer at Roche Pharmaceuticals that I worked for 1.5 years. In addition, after that, I left and went to the Wistar Institute. And then eventually that led to me getting to where I am right now. And so this whole journey, coming from a village in Guinea, West Africa, to where I am now in New York City, at this great institution, really was based off of the mentors that I had in my network. And so, what does it really mean to be a mentee? For me, it's understanding that I needed the guidance and I had to actively seek that guidance. And it's me understanding that I don't know where I'm going, or I do, I may have an idea where I'm going, but I don't know how to get there. And it's, taking advantage of professors. I was one of those students who often went to office hours, and just generally got close to my professors, and they would sort of look out for me. In addition to that, peers. some of my closest friends are actually my own mentors. One of my close friends who is in Boston right now, I consider as one of my mentors. A mentor does not necessarily have to be somebody who's older than you, or, it can be somebody who's your age or even younger. It's somebody who can actively help you and sort of push you in certain directions. And, of course, it all can also be family members and others. And the one thing I always reflect on is it takes a village of mentors to really advise you, especially coming from a first generation low socioeconomic background like myself. And you need diverse mentors, for diverse reasons, right? You might need a mentor, to help you academically, or you might need another one for socially or spiritually. Each mentor brings a sort of an angle and a facet that can really help you develop into, to where you want to be. And so that's really important to really seek out and really get diverse mentors from different backgrounds. It really does help you in sort of creating this village of a cohesive and, great mentors in general. And another thing as a mentee that I always reflect on is having an idea for where I saw myself in the future. I knew I wanted to do something in the sciences. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do something clinical or more research-based. I had done both. I had shadowed physicians and had, volunteered in hospitals, but I've also done research since as a freshman. And so, the decision of getting into grad school or med school was a very difficult thing. And so for me, I heavily leaned on a lot of my mentors, and they were very instrumental in me sort of really drilling down and really being reflective and understanding where my true passion really lies, and really where do I see myself fitting in the future. And so, we're all going to encounter tough moments where we have to make tough decisions, whether, it's picking, med school, grad school, or a career field or postdoc position. And that's where mentors really are instrumental in sort of fleshing out things and sort of making us more reflective. And one thing that's extremely important is really maintaining a healthy, sustainable relationship. It's very important that, when you seek out mentors and you have mentors that, a lot of them, can be busy. I mean, we all have busy lives, but it's important to sort of check in, be respectful of their time, of course, but, check in, reach out to them, and really continue to keep that dialogue and that communication between you strong. Some of my mentors, I don't talk for a while, but every time we catch up, it's always very helpful. I update them on my life and what's going on with me, and they do the same. And it's always very cordial, and it's very beneficial because at the end of the day, you want them to continue thinking about you, and when opportunities come by, those are the moments where you want them to sort of have an eye out for you. Especially in places where you're not, it's always really important when your name is spoken of in places where you're not, when you're not, currently in, but opportunities there, and you want your name out there, you want opportunities to come your way, and so maintaining a healthy, sustainable relationship is extremely important and keeps the longevity of your mentors. That, for me, I see a lot of my mentors sort of, lifelong, as my life develops, I sort of want to have sort of that community or that family of mentors who can really help me as I progress along. And so, this has been my experience as a mentee. And, this has really helped me actually develop into becoming a mentor. I saw what I needed and sort of what helped me out, and paying it forward is really important. And so, I'm currently informally or formally mentoring other students. And I take a lot of the experience that I had to really try to impart that into them and really make sure that there's a great mentorship relationship that I've developed. And this is something that I certainly want to do going forward. even as a mentee, I do also want to become a good mentor. And so that sort of has been my experience as a mentee. And I think I will pass it on to Rhea to really talk about, how to seek mentorship. So Rhea, all yours.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Mamadou. So following on from Mamadou, I just wanted to talk a bit about seeking mentorship informally. So if you're not a part of any formal mentorship scheme, how you can still seek out mentors. And just to give a little bit of background on me, I'm from the sunny island of Barbados, where I did an undergraduate degree at the University of the West Indies Cayfield campus, and I did a bachelor's in chemistry and math, so very much basic science. And then following that, I traveled to London. I traveled to London where the weather wasn't as great. It's an amazing city. And I did my master's at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And now I'm pursuing a PhD at Imperial College London. So next slide, please. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I started my bachelor's in basic science. And during that time, I did chemistry and math. And I knew that I wasn't interested in continuing with lab work or transitioning into medicine. And this was a big thing for me because especially I think in the Caribbean setting and for my parents who, my father did go to university but couldn't afford to do medicine even though he wanted to. His dream was that his daughter, his only child, would be able to pursue that dream. And after, getting the grades and doing well in university and getting top marks to then be like, I'm not so sure about medicine was a bit of a, I think a slight disappointment. But for me, I really didn't think it was the path I wanted to take. But at that time, unfortunately, I think my degree was very theory driven. I really didn't know how I could use these skills in other aspects or to pursue other career options. And even though I know I didn't want to do medicine, I didn't actually know which path I wanted to follow. So I started working at a chronic disease research institute. Not that I was interested in research, but it was an opportunity that came along. And I just thought, I'd get some experience while I figure out what I want to do for a master's, because I figured that was what I wanted to do, pursue my education a bit further. So at this time, my main questions were, how do I pivot from this degree to a non-lab career or a non-medicine career? And then how do I get there? Like, what masters do I choose to get there? So next slide, please. So while I was in this role, my first, let's say, informal mentor, she was an epidemiologist in the cancer, in the research institute. Her name was Dr. Angela Rose. And what first drew me to her was the fact that she was like me. She was a Caribbean woman. She was the director of a chronic disease registry there. Super nice. So I was drawn to her very informally, just over lunch, just over coffee. And after getting to know her a bit, I realized she also had a basic science degree, but then she pivoted that into research. And at this time, she was an epidemiologist. And then I had no idea what this was. I'd never heard of epidemiology. I just knew that it had a research aspect. It was looking at population health. And I think at this time, basically what drew me to it was the fact that I knew she traveled extensively. So she came from the Caribbean, but she traveled throughout Europe. She traveled throughout Africa and Asia with her job. And I found that very intriguing. So she was the first person who I thought, research, this might be something I would be interested in. So through meeting her, I was able to form a relationship, very informal, lunchtime talks, just expressing the indecision I had with regards to what I wanted to pursue and how I was intrigued by her career and wanted to know if she would share what tips or what did she study and what career path did she follow on to be able to do that. And so she was able to share that with me. One of the tips she shared was master's, where she did her master's, which was at the London School, and how great that was and how that opened her eyes to the international opportunities of research. And that really intrigued me. So over the 2 years of working in that institute, which turned out to be 2 years, I got insight into another career, so another non-lab and non-medicine career. I got insight into research, not only through my mentor, but through the work that they were doing in setting up the first chronic disease research center in Barbados. It led to me doing my master's in London, basically, from encouragement from Dr. Rose. She also gave me practical help with applying for university and funding applications. And she also helped me with getting into university by encouraging me to take more responsibility in the role that I had. Because as I mentioned, it was just a temporary thing I was going to do while waiting. You know, she kind of saw that I had an aptitude for and encouraged me to take on bigger roles, so leading the cancer team. And that's what kind of got me into the field of cancer research, more or less. And then basically the big thing from her was that I got into epidemiology. Like, I found out what it was. I was really intrigued by it. And I thought, okay, my next step would be to go on to do a master's in this. And next slide. So yeah, so after that, I came to London. I was at the London School. I did a master's in public health. And after I did that master's, I continued on as a research fellow. And this is where I kind of got my feet into cancer research a bit more. And we did research into cancer survival disparities. So this was more data-driven research that we did. We got data sets from across the globe to look at international or racial or geographic differences in cancer survival. And I was really getting my feet in and realizing that this is something that I'd be very interested in. As I started out in academia, as I mentioned, I was a research fellow, and I thought, okay, if I want to progress in this, how would I be able to progress further? You know, in academia, you go kind of to lecturer, senior lecturer, professor level. How do I get through these ranks? I knew one major thing I would have to do is do a PhD. At the time since I was working, one decision was, should I do it part-time? Should I do it full-time? You know, if I do it full-time, how do I apply for studentships and what topic I would want to do it in? So these were the questions I was kind of baffling at that time. And next slide, please. And this is when I met my second mentor, so Professor Bernard Rocher. He was a cancer epidemiologist at London School. He was a senior academic. And I add here that he was a Caucasian male, just to say, I think for my first mentor, she was a Caribbean woman, and I kind of saw myself in her and where I could go as that person. But I also want to say, as Mamadou was saying, it is important to have diversity in mentors. And I think initially I might have thought, oh, I will have nothing in common with this guy. We won't be able to have rapport. I won't be able to learn from him because we have completely different experiences. But it turned out that because we have different experiences, he was able to teach me a lot and to kind of help me to identify the skills that I have and have confidence in myself to know that I could pursue other things. Because I think a lot of times, I don't know, for me personally, I shouldn't generalize, coming from another country into this setting and sometimes thinking, oh, you know, I'm not good enough for this, or I can't do this, or I'm not able to do this. Sometimes you need someone to push you and give you that encouragement, especially someone who's made it to the top. What else drew me to him that was similar was that he had international experience, which I was very interested in. He had an extensive network, and he had advanced statistical skills, which practically are things that I wanted to advance myself in. So through knowing him, I was able to, he put me forward for a job opportunity with his partner in one of their groups. As I mentioned, he instilled in me a confidence that I think I was lacking in terms of what I was able to accomplish and what skills I already had. And this was backed up with helping me with professional development. So as a part of advancing in academia, teaching is a big part of that. So he would put me on, they would do short courses internationally. So he'd bring me along to teach as well, and, you know, try to make me teach on things that he knew I had skills and specific skills and that other people couldn't offer. Another practical thing he was able to offer were references and access to a network. So when I started to mention different things I was interested in, he would be able to put me in contact with different colleagues he had across the globe as well. And also giving research skills advice. Basically, at the end of this is when I think I was able to pinpoint, okay, cancer epidemiology is for me, this is where I want to go. And that's why I went on to do a PhD. So next slide. Yeah, so now I am finishing up my PhD. I'm in the 4th year, and the questions now I have are, you know, where do I want to do a postdoc? Do I want to do a postdoc? Where would that be? Do I want to continue in academia? Is this somewhere where I think I'll be able to offer skills and benefit from it? Or do I think I want to pivot into industry or consultancy, which might be more fast paced and more, you know, you get results in a quicker fashion? And then how do I pivot my previous experience? Because unlike some people who may have, you know, just gone bachelor's, master's, I worked in between. So kind of just harnessing that experience I had before PhD and with the PhD into more senior roles. So if we go to the next slide. So yeah, so thinking on these questions, I realized through the Imperial College London, the Postdocs and Fellows Development Centre, they kind of did a survey of all people early career researchers and people post PhD, and they did a survey of the most common questions that they have and would want to seek mentorship for. And I realized that the things I were asking, other people were also interested in. So one of it was career advice. Where can I take the skills I've learned and move on? Also academic advice in the specific academia environment. What skills do you need? Do you need a PhD to be able to go on? Do you need a postdoc? Those kind of things. Practically help with job, PhD or grant applications, with research ideas. So if you want to be more independent, it's important to get grants and be able to develop your own independent research thoughts. So it's good to have people who can help you to harness those and bring them to fruition. One thing I mentioned before is confidence and assertiveness. So I think, I don't know, maybe it's a selection bias, but I find in academia particularly, we have a lot of imposter syndrome, and I guess the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. So you have a bit of a lack of confidence and lack of self-awareness of the skills you can bring to a program. So I think seeking people who can help you with confidence and assertiveness. The further up you go, especially in academia and other settings, having a work-life balance, realizing, okay, if I want to do this, how I also am able to fulfill other parts of my life. Teaching is a big thing. Sorry, I have a lot of animations here. Networking is an also important one, which I want to just spend a bit of time on, because I think I was taught growing up, you go to school, you get the best grades, you will get a great job and everything will happen from that. And I think a hard lesson for me was learning that, yes, good grades are important, but networking is so key. And it isn't just the formal type of networking that we think of. Okay, we go to a conference and we have to do that awkward introduction to ourselves. But, surrounding yourself with people who you admire and who you aspire to their career and who can help you and give you advice is also a form of networking, which I found very important and has opened a lot of doors for me. Managing work relationships is one, and I think there are two more. Yes, career planning, very important, and in academia as well, writing and publishing. So next slide. Okay, I mentioned that already. That's there twice, but very important, work-life balance. Okay, so just at that point, when you've identified some of the things that you would be seeking in a mentor, and more importantly as well, is qualities of a mentor. So when you're looking for a mentor, what do you want to look for? Important to me, which I think is important in general, is looking to someone you admire, aspire to. So if there's somewhere you want to get, if you have your plan and you see someone who fits that, someone whose style of management you admire if you're going for more senior roles, someone who has research creativity if you're looking to be able to move out and to be more independent, someone who has maybe a work-life balance that you admire, you can seek those people out. Someone who challenges you is very important as well, because I think whereas it's important to have someone who can understand where you're coming from, it's also important, not to have someone who just agrees with all your points, who can give you alternative point of view, or who can play devil's advocate, who can try to make you expand outside of your own box and think, maybe this would be interesting, or maybe I can do that. Important is also someone who's impartial and can maintain confidentiality. So someone who isn't biased, who has no, will get no gain from if you decide this or that. Or obviously you can have people who are peers who can be mentors, but just generally, someone who's in direct competition with you might not be as unbiased. So, someone who you admire, but in a different field, a bit higher than you and a lateral move to you could also be important. Someone who can help you enhance your network. So, and this could be anyone, a senior role, a peer, because as I mentioned before, it's not just good grades and doing well at your job, but obviously knowing people and knowing of opportunities. And it's very important. And a mentor can help you with that, because if they're more senior and they have, years in academia or in industry, they will have a big network that you can tap into. And also, I think chemistry is important. So, that you have a level of comfort that you can both be honest with each other, to be able to, you share the goals that you want and them sharing, the experiences or the hardships that they have, or just being honest with you. Next slide. Then finding a mentor. So Black in Cancer has a blog on the Nature website. And We had a post there for someone about finding a mentor, an associate professor on finding a mentor. And she highlighted 4 key things. One is like find many. As you mentioned twice before, Mamadou and myself, it's good to have a diverse mentorship team. You don't only need one. There could be one for your career. There could be one for, building your confidence. There could be one for work-life balance, having a diverse team. Some can be similar to you. As I mentioned, my first mentor was a Caribbean woman who moved and then went internationally. I saw myself in her. Some can be different, a white French professor who I'd never thought I would have common themes with, but turned out that he was very instrumental in my career. Seek them out. It could be having a Zoom chat, or as I mentioned for my 2 mentors, it was very informal. It was over lunches, over coffee, just having chats with them in the corridor. It wasn't any formal meeting, but you're still able to get like very good advice from people that way. Use them. So seek their advice and involve them in your decision making. I think it's very important not to be afraid to go to them. You realize the more you do it, that people are very happy to share about their experiences and very happy to help you. Of course, there'll be, 1 or 2 bad apples, but in general, people at least are very happy to share their story with you and put you in contact with other people if they know they can't help themselves. And it's very important to help them to involve you as you're going through the process as well, because they can help with that. And then, as Mamadou mentioned, paying it forward. So, if you have been mentored, also know that even if you're junior, you can also mentor someone and have something to offer someone, even if that's just sharing your story or helping undergraduates or people in primary school, just to let them see you or see representation in a field that they might one day aspire to. And next slide. And just to finish up, just to give some extra personal tips, so just from me personally, I think what was important for me for each stage when I had a mentor was identifying what advice I was seeking. So in the first stage, it was kind of like, okay, I have this bachelor's, I don't want to do medicine, I don't want to do lab. What do I want to do? How can I pivot this? Second section of my career was more, how can I progress in academia? What do I need to be able to do that? Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think sometimes, especially coming from in the Caribbean, we can be a bit hierarchical and we might think, this person's a professor, I can't go to them and ask. But you realize people are very happy to take your questions. I mean, at worst, they can say no, but I think a lot of times people are very willing to share with you or give you 5 minutes of their time. And there's a wealth of knowledge just in people's experiences. It doesn't have to be a very formal setting, but just them talking about the path they took. Another thing is don't be afraid to share your own experiences. Obviously, sharing things you've gone through will help people to guide you. And then, as Mamadou mentioned as well, maintaining the relationships. You might not be in contact with the person very regularly, but ever so often, just keeping in contact throughout your career would be very helpful. For me now, for the postdoc, it's very helpful to go back to Professor Haché, about advice on postdocs, because I'm thinking internationally, he's French, what opportunities are there in France? Do you know people there? It's a very good thing to keep these people in your arsenal as well as you move forward. So yeah, that's just some tips from me based on my personal experience. And now we move on to Julia talking about being a mentor.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mamadou and Rhea. It's been great to hear about your experiences of being a mentee and also moving into mentorship as well. So I'm going to speak just for a little while about being a mentor, becoming a mentor. So a little bit about me. So you may have seen me in the chat say big up UE, which is University of West Indies, or big up the Caribbean. And that's because I am a 3rd generation British Jamaican. So just on the right there, that's my granddad, my late granddad. He came over to England as a teenager from Jamaica on a boat. Took him 3 weeks to sail across. He begun the Morris legacy here in England. So I'm a product of the Windrush generation, very proudly. So a bit about my education. So I'm the only person in my family who's into science. I'm a bit of an oddball in that sense. I loved science in school, and my teachers really encouraged me to pursue science. So I did my undergrad at the University of Bristol in cellular and molecular medicine with a study in industry, which I really, really enjoyed. So I decided I wanted to stay in science. So yeah, I can see some Jamaican flags in the chat. I love it. And during my undergraduate degree, I really I did a study in industry, as I said. So I knew I wanted to work in a lab setting, and the way to progress in research would be to do a PhD. So it's just a very natural progression for me. So I did my PhD in molecular biology and biotechnology at the University of Sheffield. I graduated kind of last year. I mean, graduations were cancelled due to the pandemic. But my thesis was titled Investigating the Repair of Protein-Linked DNA Breaks. So I was very much into DNA repair. And yeah, that really got me into cancer research. So could I have the next slide, please? After I finished my PhD, I applied to become a postdoctoral research associate, and my first job was in the mitosis cancer and pharmacology lab at the University of Manchester. So I was employed by Cancer Research UK, Manchester Institute. So that was a one-year postdoc. Initially, kind of got a little bit messed up by the pandemic, but we pivoted a bit. So now I'm working as a bioscientist, specialising in cell biology in the drug discovery unit at Cancer Research UK still. So as you can see, I'm quite green behind the ears in terms of my career. So when it came to mentorship, I had quite a lot of hesitations. I felt like I wasn't experienced enough. I've only been working for a year, or well, I guess at the time it was a year. I wasn't too sure what I really had to share. And in terms of mentorship, there are kind of 3 levels, which Mamadou and Rhea have outlined really well. So just to give them names, so we have peer-to-peer, so that's your peers being your mentors. And then we have near-peer, which is say if I'm an undergraduate student, my peer is a PhD student or a postdoc, so someone who's quite near to me or near to you in your career. And then you have far peer, which is a professor, someone at the top of their game. And so when I thought about mentorship, I thought, oh, it's far peer. I can't mentor. I've barely lived my life. But I think that it's even though I'm an early career researcher, I've still got a lot to give. And I think that's important to recognise that, I don't know who's on the call right now, but if you're, considering mentorship and, oh, could I be a mentor? Could I help someone? The answer is yes. If you've been through experiences, you can share that. You can share your mistakes. You can share the things that helped you excel, etc. So I can have the next slide. So my mentorship experience so far. So as I said, I think I was approached to become a mentor maybe in the 2nd year of my PhD. I said no. Again in the 3rd year, I said no. And then the 4th year, I was maybe. But it wasn't until I got into my first job, my alumni, the University of Bristol was come on, Julia, will you be a mentor? And I was oh, okay. So I've mentored through Bristol Mentors, the scheme for a year, and now I'm going into my 2nd year, which is great. But then also I informally mentor as well. I have my own website and blog, and I've just opened it up if anybody wants to have a chat about becoming a scientist, because as you know, there are not many people who look like us or look like me, I should say, in cancer research. So if people want to get into it, my inbox is open. So these are the types of mentoring I've done so far for the past about a year now, which has been really good. And why do I love it? there is a saying, and I think it's from the Bible, which is like, it's better to give than receive. And I think I just love like sharing about my story. I love like helping someone like build their confidence. That's something that Mamadou and Rhea talked about, like having their mentors like really push them to apply for internships or to help them navigate their careers and stuff. I think it's great that we can, you know, whatever experience that you have, that you can share that with people. And it doesn't take much. Like I meet with my mentees once a month over Zoom each, and that's it. We just sit and have a chat. I look over their resumes or CVs, and it's just a really special time. And so yeah, I think like things like introducing people to my network, like again, I'm early career, but actually if you think about it, I was at university for 8 years. So I've encountered a lot of people. And so one of my mentees is really into data science. I'm not a data scientist, but I actually have colleagues who I went to, I did my undergraduate with and I did my PhD with, who are really into data science and bioinformatics. So I was able to connect my mentee with them, and they've had like Zoom meetings, and now they're kind of in a kind of an informal mentoring relationship as well. So like it's really kind of good to kind of connect people to my network, and also to like share my mistakes, of which I have plenty. There isn't enough time to talk about the number of mistakes I've made throughout my career. But also just to be real with them. Like, as I said, like during the pandemic, life was a bit crazy, and I had to really think about my career progression, where I was going, and to share that in real time with my mentee was actually really invaluable for them as well, for my mentees, I should say. So yeah, next slide. Fantastic. So kind of that's all I've got to say about being a mentor. So now we're just going to introduce the Black in Cancer Mentorship Programme. So basically, Mamadou, Rhea and I have been working to establish the Black in Cancer Mentorship Programme, which is a programme for Black undergraduate students with an interest in a career in cancer. So whether that's science, technology, engineering, maths, we want everyone who's interested in becoming fighting against cancer to be involved. And these are for undergraduates who are based at UK or USA institutions, as I said, studying STEM subjects. If I could have the next slide. So our aim is to match 30 mentors with 30 mentees, and the mentors are Black people and allies who are currently contributing to the fight against cancer. So although our aim is to help Black students, our mentors, as Rhea really really beautifully explained, that having a mentor who doesn't look like you, who's had a different experience to you, actually can be really, really helpful. So we want to pair these mentors with mentees, 15 from the UK and 15 from the US. Can I hand over to Mamadou or Rhea just to do a couple of slides here?
Yeah, sure. I can take over. So the idea is really to connect students with a mentor, right? And really, in addition to professionals who are also working in the field of cancer. So this is not just academia, we're also trying to expand it to industry. And so we're seeking out some industry collaborators in addition to the academic institutions we already reached out. So the idea is to really provide a listening ear and encouragement. A lot of these students, which we're targeting are Black students, but also, they may be first generation, low socioeconomics like me, and sort of are going through a lot of other troubles that, perhaps, they need a listening ear and some encouragement, and really to push them and say, hey, you can actually do this. And in addition, give specific cancer research or industry career insights. Again, a lot of these students we're targeting may not understand, what cancer research really entails, how diverse it is, what can you do with a degree, a PhD degree or a master's degree or any other degree they pursue. And really the idea is to really help students, in the short term and long term in terms of their goals, and also to identify training opportunities to help them prepare them to further study or work. So that includes how to write a resume or CV, how to give interviews, and things like that, like sort of quote unquote soft skills, which are actually very important and integral, in addition to like how to maintain a relationship with a mentor or how to draft an email, like these small little things that, can add up over time, and can really, give you a leg up in any, wherever you go in life, I guess. And so we really want to arm them with the tools and the resources to really reach their fullest potential. And so that's the whole point of this mentorship program. Rhea, do you want to take over this one?
Yeah. So as a part of the mentorship scheme, we're hoping to provide employability. So we have a lot of training events for them, as Mamadou said, trying to build up their soft skills in addition to the academic skills they would be learning. We also want to keep people motivated throughout and give them, some excitement in science. So we plan to have science communication competitions with prizes. I think there's a bit of a push as well in research to, not only be able to conduct your research in a lab and write it up, also to effectively communicate with people. There's been a push for like 3-minute theses competitions and, poster competitions and stuff like that. So we're trying to also make sure that our students are well-rounded in that field. We'll also have monthly raffles for vouchers. So we know, as Mamadou mentioned, some people might come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. So they can use this to, buy resources and books, because we know university is rather expensive. Even if you have a scholarship, just these little things also add up. And one of the major things that we'd like to provide for students is funding for an 8-week summer internship in an academic laboratory or a non-lab setting. So like me, I do epidemiology. So just in someone's group where they can learn practically some research skills for that 8-week period over the summer. And next slide. So then the program so far, we have kicked off opening our applications the end of June 2021 with our launch. And we plan to leave this open until the end of August. We've gotten some applications in already, but we're still reaching out to a lot of people because, we want to be as wide reaching as possible and make sure we're able to match mentees with suitable mentors as well. We plan to do the interviews and the pairing in September, where we will also like to do brief interviews with mentees just to hear their thoughts and reasons for wanting to be in the program. And with the idea to have an official launch in the end of September. So September will start the 9-month program. So then that will end in June. And then we plan for the students to be able to, if offered, take up summer internship from June to mid-September.
We have had a couple of questions as we were talking. So I'll start there whilst if anybody has any more questions, do feel free to type and post them and we'll read them out as we go along. So Mamadou, you have a question here. Why you? What did you do differently to attract the professors at college as a mentee?
So I guess, it does sort of has to do a little bit with your personality. I consider myself naturally reserved, but for some reason, I sort of have an old soul in me. Maybe it was because of growing up with my grandparents, but I actually enjoyed going to office hours. So for those who don't know, office hours is a time slot that professors give in undergrad that you can go and sort of, ask questions about, a lesson that you didn't understand. And so I would often go and ask questions and just naturally, informally, I would just start engaging in conversations with professors. They would ask like, oh, what are you interested in doing? And they would, they would talk about, I would ask about, how did they get to the stage they're at? And so naturally, they, professors and chairpersons, they receive a lot of opportunities, just like we are sending out, these email chains out to chairs and heads of departments. Professors receive that. And so they sometimes distribute it to the whole department, often which gets lost in your spam, or they sometimes will directly email it to certain students. So I was fortunate enough that professors would directly reach out to me, and so over time I really just got sort of a great relationship with some of my key professors, specifically those who are in the science field. And so it was sort of just natural. It is one of those things you do have to actively seek out. Like I said, I didn't really have an older brother, older sister, or someone who I can reach out to. So I heavily relied on professors or peers or people who, were higher up than me. So yeah, that's a good question though.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Thank you so much for answering that, Mamadou. And Rhea, a question for you. You mentioned chemistry and quality of mentor-mentee relationship. How do you achieve that?
Yeah, so for me, chemistry, I think it's something, I don't know, you can't really explain, but I think what helps it to flourish and helps the relationship to flourish, as I mentioned, is open communication as well. So I think there are some people who you may have had bosses, you may have had different colleagues you work with, but you aren't able to share your experiences at their shares. It isn't that easy. But I think if you find someone with who you think you can share openly, you can be honest in your experience, you can be honest in places where you're struggling or where you would like to get to, then I think that's what builds a very strong mentor-mentee relationship. Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure, as the mentee, you want to be honest to say where you're struggling or where you need help. And as the mentor, it's important to be honest to show, you also don't want to show, okay, everything is rosy and everything is perfect. You also want to show some struggles you had so that your mentee can understand how they can overcome certain things, or how they can, if they're feeling a certain way, that's normal, that they might not know everything, just to be able to get through that. So I think if on either side, people aren't being completely honest or having open communication, then it won't be a great relationship. So I think chemistry, as I mentioned, is something I can't explain, but I think if you go into it being very honest and being very open, and you are lucky to find someone who can give you that back, it will be very rewarding in the end.
Great, that's a great answer. Thank you, Rhea. So also we've had a question saying, for the mentorship program, do you consider non-UK based applicants? So as I said earlier, this is our first year. We're just launching the Black Cancer Mentorship Programme, really exciting. But we've only managed to secure funding for for undergraduates and mentors who are based at UK and USA institutions specifically. But in future, we know Black people don't just live in the UK and US. So we would love to open it up in the future. But for this initial launch, it's just the UK people based at UK and USA institutions. So you can be international, but as long as you're based at a UK or USA institution. Do you guys have anything to add on that?
No, I've received similar questions too, and same answer. Okay. It's just for the funding purposes, you have to be UK based or USA based, but we hope to expand this.
Yeah, awesome. So we have another question here that says, how would you define a mentor specifically? I understand that it's a professional in the cancer research field, but do you have to be a PhD student or have earned a PhD to be a mentor? The answer is no. So you have to be somebody who's working in the field of, cancer, but you can be somebody who works in you work in the industry and you haven't got a PhD. One of the main things is that, you've got your network. So if you have a mentee who's like, oh, I really want to do a PhD, you may specifically not be able to say, well, this is how you do a PhD application, et cetera, et cetera. But you can have a load of people around you who will be able to help them with that. But it's you can share your journey no matter where you're at. You're working to fight against cancer, and that's the main thing. You can share your story and your experiences. You've written job applications, you've put together a resume or a CV, you've done networking, all of these key key things, like you set up a LinkedIn, all of these things that are so mind-boggling to undergraduates. You've got this rich experience that you can share. So I hope that answered your question. And again, do you guys have anything else to add to that?
No, I certainly encourage people to definitely apply, because, you know, we're going to get diverse mentees, and we would like diverse mentors from, you know, the cancer research field is extremely diverse, you know, from consulting to academia. So, you know, we definitely, you know, encourage people to certainly apply, because, you know, not everybody's, you know, most of these, I'm sure not every mentee would be interested to get into a PhD or go into medicine. Maybe they want to do something of a slightly different variation that might be more similar to a mentor that, you know, might be interested in mentoring. So
yeah, I agree. And I think the more diverse the mentors we have, then it means the more diverse mentee population we can have as well, so we can like widen the breadth of people we can take on. So that would be great as well.
Yes, fantastic. And yeah, we just got some comments here saying like, this is helpful, even if you're not in the business or the science side of the world. It's insightful on humbling yourself to be a mentee. That's great. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for those comments. And yeah, this is encouragement. Like, I'm going to post our socials and websites in the chat right now. Please do keep in touch. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Black in Cancer. Our website is there. And actually that's the link to apply to become a mentor or a mentee, www.blackincancer.com/mentorship. Please share with your networks, share with any Black undergraduates you know, share with your institutions or your companies, share. Our email address is in the chat as well, and the blog post that Rhea mentioned earlier. So yes, please do apply. And thank you so much for coming. If there are any more questions, we can take them now. Otherwise, it is 7 p.m. / 2 p.m. EST. So we can wrap up. But thank you so much, everybody, for coming.
Yes, thanks, everyone.
Yeah, it's been great to see you all, and thank you for engaging. Thank you for your questions. And
we hope you apply or spread the words, but we're very excited and happy that all of you tuned in.
Yes. Wonderful.